Examining the physiology of blood, we see that blood flows from areas of high pressure to areas of low pressure against resistance. Resistances are the factors or the variables that impede and slow blood flow. Blood is viscous due to the presence of erythrocytes and the plasma proteins that are found within it. The viscosity or the stickiness of blood causes it to stick to the walls of the vessels as it flows, decreasing its pressure and slowing it down. Poiseuille's law is a mathematical equation derived by Jean-Léonard Marie Poiseuille, a French physiologist and physician, in order to describe blood flow through blood vessels. As mentioned previously, blood flow is equal to the change in pressure of blood as blood moves through those vessels, divided by resistance. Without putting any actual numbers into this equation, we can gather a few quick pieces of information just by looking at the equation itself. With resistance in the denominator of the equation, we know that a larger resistance is going to create lower blood flow, and a small resistance is going to create higher blood flow. Expanding upon this equation and then rearranging it to solve for resistance, we will focus on two variables. The first is lambda, which is the upside down y in the upper right corner of the equation, and r, which is in the denominator. Lambda is a Greek letter, and in this equation it is the variable that takes into account the length of blood vessels. And r takes into account the radius of blood vessels. We'll examine lambda first. Considering blood vessel length, we see that longer blood vessels create more resistance, and shorter blood vessels create less resistance. The average adult possesses approximately 60,000 miles of blood vessels in the body. Blood vessel length tends to not change quickly in the body, so it is not a variable that can be altered easily in order to change blood pressure and blood flow. Different tissues contain different amounts of blood vessels. So for instance, 1 pound of muscle tissue contains about 400 miles of blood vessels, whereas 1 pound of adipose tissue contains about 200 miles of blood vessels. Gaining 10 pounds of adipose tissue adds about 2,000 miles of blood vessels and makes the heart work harder because it creates more resistance to blood flow. The other major variable we will examine is R. Blood vessel radius, which is represented by the variable R, is equal to 1/2 the diameter of that vessel. This is a measure of how wide the lumen of the vessel is, and recall that the lumen is the space where the blood flows through. In the rearranged equation, R is in the denominator, and in addition, it is also raised to the 4th power. This means that any small increase in R is going to amplify its effect. So raised to the 4th power means multiplying that number by itself 3 times. So for example, 1 to the 4th power is 1 times 1 times 1 times 1, which still equals 1. Meanwhile, 2 to the 4th power is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which is equal to 16. Since R is in the denominator of Poiseuille's rearranged equation for resistance, this means that a larger radius will create a lower resistance and better blood flow, and a smaller radius will create higher resistance and lower blood flow. Both vasodilation and vasoconstriction can quickly change blood vessel radius, and it's one of the biggest factors, one of the biggest variables in determining blood resistance and blood flow. His law also considers the viscosity of blood, but blood viscosity does not happen to change very quickly. Blood viscosity can only change if the number of red blood cells or the hematocrit changes, either with anemias or polycythemias, or if the number of proteins in the blood changes.